Alive. Greetings, greetings, family. Welcome, welcome to another Sister Shanice show. I want to thank you all so much for joining us on this platform. As you can see, I've got my beautiful melanated family members in the house, and we are getting ready to deliver a really interesting conversation with you, our wonderful audience. Certainly hope that the last few days, the last strong, some say weak, we say strong. Hope it's been a great one for you. And if everybody could put their YouTube on mute, please, to make sure it's not me, mute. Sorry, that was me. I unmuted when I'd already muted. Apologies. So, yeah, certainly hope that you've had a great, strong. There's been so much that's been happening on the continent. So much. You know, there is a wind of revolutionary change that is happening across the continent. This is a wonderful time to be alive. We are seeing, family, the rising of our youth. We are, seeing our young people coming together, irrespective of nationality, tribe, religion, and the differences that have been used to separate us in the past. We're seeing a unity that like never before, and I am loving it, absolutely loving it. Okay, let me go around the board and ask our guests to introduce themselves to you, our wonderful audience. Let's start with our beloved Brother Hardy. Please take your phone off mute, Brother Hardy, and welcome. Please introduce yourself to our audience.
Well, good evening, Sister Shanice, and my co-guest, my brother Kwame Gonza. Good to see you here. And Lillian, I think. My name is Hadi Yakubu. I'm an African citizen based in Ghana. I coordinate a Pan-African movement called Africans Rising, which is a movement dedicated to organizing and mobilizing African people for African unity, because we believe that unity is the only path to prosperity and self-defense. I'm happy to be back here. It's been a while, and it's always a delight to be on the Sister Shanice show. Apologies to our audience if I'm not my usual self, because I'm a bit under the weather. But my ancestors and the spirits are with me, and be back stronger another time. Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much, Brother Hardy. And, let's make sure it's not so long again before you come back. We love you here on the Sister Shanice show. And going over to Brother Kwame Gonza, who we also love here, and he's not a stranger on the Sister Shanice show either. Brother Kwame, welcome back. Introduce yourself to the audience.
Thank you very much, Sister Shanice. Thank you for, first of all, organizing this program. And thank you to our viewers who are out there. These programs are very important because they help us to project the African narrative. It is very important. I want to thank my brother, Hadi, for being part of this. And of course, the great work he's doing out there for our continent is very important. I want to thank, our sister Lillian, who is on the program. It is very important, for us to reflect once in a while on what is happening on the continent. Not actually, actually not once in a while, but always, because, the big players are out there investing in the media. Britain is investing around 600 million pounds every year in propaganda. So we need to be out there also as Pan-Africanists, pushing, the narrative of the Africans. So as Sister Shanice has mentioned, my name is Kwame Gonza. I'm working with the Africa Continental Unity Party. It is also a movement which is trying to organize the continent and the African people politically, and to bring that political consciousness. So we are working with other Pan-African organizations, in one way or the other. You're right, briefly when it comes to Pan-African matters. And we are also pushing different projects, which we will talk about another time, when we get a chance. A lot of projects are being pushed on a Pan-African scale. And yes, we are not sitting. When we disappear from programs like this, we want to promise you that we are not sitting. We are pushing Pan-Africanism with everything that we have. So until maybe when we hand over the torch to the next generation, as the generation which went and left the torch for us, did its work. So we are pushing to make sure that we contribute our quota, and we contributed very well. So as you are contributing yours, Sister Shani, I want to thank you also for your work, and to the audience for paying attention to what is going on across the continent, because I understand you have a lot of African diaspora audience, and also you have others on the continent. But I want to thank them also for paying attention to the continent and also the global Africans, whatever is going on there. So I want to thank you once again, and I'm happy to be part of this program this evening. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Brother Kwame. We're absolutely delighted to have you on the platform as well. Yes, we are one people. We may be scattered around the globe, but we are one people. We all stem from the same roots. And some of us may have been born in America, we may have been born in the UK, we may have been born on the continent, but we are one people. And so it's always a privilege and an honor to be amongst my people from different parts of the world. So we can come together and, as you say, talk about the issues that are impacting on us from our perspective. Because as you say, the UK, America, and Europe, they spend billions every year pushing a particular narrative that's not in our interest. And sometimes, that narrative can consume us, and we don't take the time to have the conversations that we need to have. So thank you so much for the work that you continue to do, even though out of sight. We know you're busy out there. Rise up, and keep rising. We also want to rise up a new guest on the Sister Shanice Show platform, our sister Lillian, who hails from the eastern side of the continent. Welcome. How are you doing? Please introduce yourself.
I'm good. I'm good. My name is Lillian Niva Magero. I'm an African woman based in Kenya. I love Africa so much. I love and I'm proud to be called an African woman. I work with an organization called Motherland Youth Foundation Movement. It is under Pan-African Youth Foundation Movement. In this movement, we came up with this movement with a reason, because we felt that the unity of Africa is very important. The unity in Africa is essential for our collective progress and prosperity. This is the reason why we came up with the movement, and our main objective was to unite all Africans. It doesn't matter where you are. It doesn't matter where you're coming from. It doesn't matter. As long as you are an African, we are together. We are doing something as Africans. We are now thinking outside the box. We are now thinking. Our leaders came up in a different way. The freedom fighters of Africa, they really fought for our independence. Then we as Africa, we are asking ourselves several questions. What can we do to better and to have the Africa that we want? This is the reason why we are coming together to help one another, to reason. And also when we are helping one another, when something is wrong, either in Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, South Africa, or wherever, when something is wrong, we need to come out and support one another. And that thing that is not good, we need to be against it. Because when we want something, when we want the Africa that we want, at least we need to be very flexible in what we are doing. we must be accountable for everything we are doing, we as Africans, because when there's no accountability in our continent, I'm talking about Africa, if there's no accountability, and more so amongst our leaders, then we are heading nowhere. We are not going to have a future generation that is very productive. We are not going to have Africa that we want and Africa that we need. And we need also freedom. When I'm talking about freedom, I'm talking about peace. I'm talking about where you can express yourself when something is not right. And I believe that this one can only happen when we, the young people, we are awake. When we, the young people, we know what we want. When we, the young people, we can change the narrative. When we, the young people, because I believe that our ancestors played a very big role. I believe that our parents, our grandparents, our great-grandparents, they did their role. And whatever they did that was not right, for example, we need to rectify. And this is the time. We don't have any other time. This is the right time we need to wake up. All youths in Africa, kindly, wherever you are, don't be shaken. Wherever you are, don't be intimidated. Wherever you are, speak out. Wherever you are, change your generation. Wherever you are, change the continent. We need a future and bright Africa. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Absolutely agree with everything that you've said there. The youth are our future. You're doing an amazing work, providing that space so young people can come together and share their ideas about the Africa they want. That's so important because, you're the leaders of tomorrow. You're going to be living in tomorrow's world. When the older ones like myself have passed on, the Africa that you create today, that we leave behind, is the Africa that you're going to live in, and the Africa that those who come behind are going to live in as well. And so it's so important that you have the conversations about, the direction of travel, because if you listen to the mainstream, they're not going to give you a picture of what Africa could be like. They're just going to continue showing you an image that they want to project on us, that Africa is all about. So thank you all so much for those wonderful introductions. Just want to remind the family, as you come through the door, please do let us know. Please do let us know. Sorry about that. Please do let us know that you're in the house. Tell us where in the world you're watching us from. We want to know. And I've been posting the link in the background. So hopefully some of you have got that link and you're logging on now as a result of having that link. We want to bring in your important views, thoughts, and opinions throughout the show. So, please feel welcome to drop your comments in the comments section as well. And as I said, we will bring your comments in as we go through the show today. To those of you who are not already a subscriber, please do subscribe to the channel. Once you subscribe to the channel, then you'll get the notifications of when we go live. And also you can support the works that we do here. On this platform, this is where, it's about our narrative, and you can hear what's happening from various perspectives, okay? So apologies for the slight interruptions in the background there. All right, so let me pull up the live show here so that I can see who's in the chat. Hey, okay, hot tap. We've got Brother Kwame Oboje in the house. King Ja is in the house, watching us from the motherland. Rise up to you. We've got Brother Zachary in the house as well from Cheetown in Illinois. Welcome. Kwame saying our youths in Kenya are 100%. These are 100% with you and for you, brothers and sisters out there. He says, get rid of that old devil Ruto. Well, we'll hear what our panel members have to say about that. I think you know what we've been saying about that on previous shows. And we, we're all for good leaders. We're all for leaders who are for their people. But when we can see that the leaders seem to be serving other masters and not the interest of their people, on this platform, as far as we're concerned, they got to go. They got to go. If they're no good to their country, their nation, and their people, they got to go. End of. Make way for someone who does have the interest of the people at heart. Janaba is in the house. Rise up, rise up. She said, I'm glad the young people are visionaries. Yes, sir. Likewise. Rise up, family, and keep posting your messages in the chat. Rise up, Brother Mikey. Rise up, each and every one of you. Post in the chat. Let us know that you're in the house. Let us know where in the world you're viewing us from. If you have any comments, thoughts, and opinions, that's the place for it to be. Okay, so without further ado, let's get the conversation on the way, because I know that each of our guests have got a lot to say. Our beloved brother Hardy won't be able to stay with us throughout the entirety of the show, because as he said, he's a bit under the weather. So I want to bring in our brother first. So today, we're going to be focusing primarily on Kenya, and it's entitled Kenya GenZ Part 2. And those of you who are in tune to what's been happening on the ground on the continent, you will know that there has been a revolutionary charge for change happening in Kenya. It was triggered by the finance bill and the increased taxes that the government wanted to impose on their people so that they could finance their debt with the IMF. But these taxes just cut too deep. And so the people rose up and said, absolutely no way, reject the bill, Ruto must go. Demonstrations and protests started happening across the country. As far as we know, very sadly, very tragically, at least 39 people are dead now as a result of those protests. And so we want our people to be able to protest peacefully wherever they are in the world. Hundreds of thousands of young people came out carrying placards saying, reject the finance bill, Ruto must go, we are peaceful. There should be absolutely no deaths as a result of those protests. We saw from the images the police with their tear gas, their live ammunition, their chemicalized water cannons that they were spraying on the people. And to most of us who are looking on and seeing all of this, we're absolutely horrified, because that's not how we expect our young people on the continent to be treated, in this day and age, by their own leaders. These are not the former colonialists that we're talking about who's doing this. This is Africans giving these instructions and doing this to their people. And so we want to have a conversation now about, what else has been happening that maybe we're not seeing in the media. We also want to get the perspective of the young people on this. So let's start with our brother Hardy. Welcome, brother Hardy. Please take yourself off mute and go ahead.
Right. Thank you again, Sister Shanice. And I think you've done an excellent synopsis of the happenings in Kenya over the past roughly 4 weeks. We've seen significant civil and people's, uprising against the Ruto regime, as you said, as triggered by the finance bill. But the finance bill being only a spark that has brought forward so many boiling issues that have been bottled up over years since William Ruto was elected in 2022, and before then, when he was vice president to Uhuru Kenyatta. But in order to fully understand what we're dealing with in the circumstance, and Sister Lillian is here, who is on the ground in Kenya, so we could defer to her on some of the on-ground specifics. But watching from a Pan-African perspective, and first of all, I have to begin by condemning the high-handedness of the police and the security, in the kind of response that they have given to the protests, leading to the deaths, injuries of protesters. But these are the ones that are in the public domain. What many people do not know about are abductions, state-sponsored abductions of protesters, and extrajudicial killings. Just earlier today or yesterday, a young man was found dead. A young man who was earlier, abducted was found dead. For the past few days, bodies have been discovered in that manner in various parts in Kenya. For those who know the political terrain in Kenya, and especially with Ruto in charge, this would not be strange, even though Ruto himself promised to do everything to prevent or to curb extrajudicial killings, whereas he's basically the master of extrajudicial killings. So we need, all Africans everywhere need to condemn this unreservedly. And last week, Africans Rising, together with about 400 African civil society organizations, African and African diaspora civil society organizations, was able to send a strong letter to President Ruto to respect the right to life, the right to protest, and all other fundamental human rights of protesters, and to serve a warning that we African people across the continent and the diaspora will be watching very closely, and he better, behave himself and not target people basically simply because they are protesting against bad governance, misrule, and corruption. But I think that for those who had been reading the political scene would have known that we would be here. We would come here. I have been to Kenya at least 2 or 3 times already this year. And one can see if you are not fooled by the plum and plush within the Nairobi CBD and many plush areas within Kenya, and you actually do some work in different parts in the slum areas, for example, what they call the informal settlements, you would see that no matter how much high levels of grammar that Ruto can go to Washington and speak, the people, our people, are just like many other African countries, are reeling under very heavy cost of living, taxes, and whatnot. So this has been long in coming, and it's been ongoing. But this is by far probably the biggest demonstration that in the history in the recent history of Kenya, and many people believe it is a rightful successor to the Mau Mau. When you look at the way in which it has evolved. Ruto, immediately after being elected, began to brand himself as the Pan-African icon, the one who speaks for Africa, the one who speaks African issues. And because of the platforms that he was given by his patrons, was able to articulate certain positions that were then taken as granted to be the Pan-African positions. We've heard him talk about reform of the global financial institutions and why those institutions are stuck against Africans. We've heard him talk about the issue of the dollar. We've heard him talk about the climate issues and whatnot. Last year, he hosted the Africa Climate Summit together with the African Union in Nairobi. We had to organize a counter summit and a protest in Nairobi against some of the things that were, because that whole Africa Climate Summit was given to the American consultancy called McKinsey and Company, was the one that wrote even the concept note and did all the planning. So we had to push back on that. But what I'm trying to say is that the positioning of Ruto by his PR machine, by his handlers, from the beginning, I think the logic was to give him that political and social capital using the Pan-African platform so that he could lead, he could gain enough access both in the continent and in outside, in order to be able to make the kind of negotiations that were needed to get his patrons what they needed and what they were looking for in Africa. And there were two problems with that. First of all, the Pan-African platform he sought to position himself in was not a genuine one, because Ruto is not a Pan-Africanist. Ruto is just a PR Pan-Africanist. And I had occasion to warn a number of people right from the beginning to be patient and observe, because Ruto has a tendency of talking from two sides of his mouth, from both sides of his mouth. And he gives traffic indicator for left and he turns right. Whatever he says publicly, he's more than 90% likely to do the direct opposite of that. So I had occasion to warn a number of my compatriots, Pan-Africanists, to be patient and watch and not be carried away by the grammar that Ruto was speaking. And it has come, to pass. So one problem with his approach was that his Pan-Africanism was not sort of genuine. That's one. Secondly, by the kind of position that he took, he already put himself in a way that did not respond exactly to the needs of Kenya in particular. Because so long as we want Pan-Africanism to be on the scale and all of that, it's part of Pan-Africanism to be aware and responsive to the local needs of the people. So Ruto's Pan-African PR machine, by positioning him on the Pan-African pedestal, was in a way abdicating his responsibility to the local Africans who are based in Kenya. and it was always going to backfire. The third point was that Ruto's positioning as a Pan-African icon and the need to gain that kind of capital, political and public relations capital, was not to serve African interests, but to serve those people who helped him finance and all of that. You know, these are the Western people, primarily America. And we've seen that in a lot of the things that he does. The Africa Climate Summit, for instance, he brought all these American corporations, and he's been hobnobbing with NATO, has been invited to the US, and all of those things. They're not even hiding. It's not even subtle. He's now made Kenya to be designated as a major non-NATO ally. So these three problems combined together were always going to backfire on him. And he was moving so fast that many people could not read between the lines. And I know a lot of people were fooled, for instance, by the announcement of so-called visa-free, which turned out not to be visa-free. The African Climate Summit, which was packed with Global North corporations in terms of its design and its content, some of, like, walking back some of the things that are in the interest of African people, especially when it comes to climate. So, for instance, one of the things that were being advanced at the Africa Climate Summit was carbon credits. And if you are familiar with the climate discussions, you would see that carbon credits are now being used as another conduit to gobble up huge swathes of land in Africa. I've been told that 10%, a whole 10% of the total landmass of Liberia has now been given off to multinational companies for carbon credits. Tanzania, tens of millions of hectares, Zimbabwe, and all of that. And the basic thing is that they understand what is causing the climate crisis, the climate change, that they are the ones causing it. But instead of stopping what they are doing that causes the climate crisis, they've now come up with the carbon credits scheme. And that scheme is basically this, that they will buy huge swaths of land with enough trees to, because trees and vegetation and things like that help with absorbing carbon from the atmosphere. So with enough trees and all of that to absorb the carbon from the atmosphere. So the amount of land that they buy, the amount of forest that they buy, would determine how much would give them more licenses to produce more carbon, with the hope that the trees will absorb that carbon that they are producing. Why don't you just stop producing the carbon in order to stop the climate change? So they're using that as a scheme to gobble up huge swathes of land. In Tanzania, local people, Maasai people, are being chased away, and the land given to United Arab Emirates companies. Liberia has given off up to 10% of its total landmass. Zimbabwe, in Kenya right now, there are serious negotiations about large swathes of land that are to be given out. These were some of the climate policies that Ruto and his people were pushing at the Africa Climate Summit. Ruto made a speech at the Africa Climate Summit saying that It was not about who has done what and who did what in the past. And therefore, we should think about what we have to do together to move forward. Basically, rubbishing reparations and the need for it. You know, so when we talk about reparations, we are talking about who is culpable and who must pay the price of what damage has been caused. He basically said that it's not about that. It's not about who did what and who did what in the past. The past is gone. So clearly, he'd been propped up by all the media and all of that to stand on this Pan-African platform, fake Pan-African platform, so that he could then advance he could then advance, and he was making this speech barely a week after John Kerry, who was the U.S. climate envoy, had made the announcement that the United States did not agree to pay climate reparations. Right? We know that entities like Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation are pushing genetically modified organisms on the African farmers. And a law is being debated just now in Kenya, or has come to pass already, where local people, and this is a case even in Burkina Faso a few years ago that was passed, local people could no longer use their indigenous seeds, and they cannot pass seeds from one farmer to another, else they will face jail time for doing that, because they depend now on seeds that are being produced by multinational agro companies. So when you look at all of these combined, the point I'm making here, first point is that this was already everybody who knew the political climate in Kenya knew that this was going to come. What form and what shape of it, nobody could tell. So that is the first point. The second point is, I think it is very fashionable that the branding of Gen Z revolution, Gen Z protest, and all of that. But I think that is a bit that doesn't quite capture the whole picture, because these protests and all the accompanying civil actions are not limited to those people, the demographic that people call the Gen Z. It's not limited. In fact, it's based of a lot of mobilization and political education work that has been going on continuous basis for many years. And participation actually cuts across generations. It cuts across generations. It may have been buoyed by social media and younger people and all of that, but participation actually cuts across generations. And so for me, as a political organizer, I think, much as it is fashionable to call it Gen Z protest, it can be quite isolating to label it like that, in the sense that you sort of isolate the demographic within that Gen Z, and that can be dangerous, because then they can become enemy number one of the state, in terms of the kind of things that Ruto and Kenya have been known to be doing. So I think we might want to tamper on that a bit, but I don't know to what extent. But clearly, in our analysis, we should also begin to think about how to make sure that we do not isolate that demographic, and also that we do not make it look like the challenges that these protests are about are facing only people of a particular generation, and not the entire Kenyan society. And that the people participating in the protests are not people of all generations, but just one particular. Um, the third point that comes out of this analysis, and for me, which is probably the most important, is that it is in our interest as African people to be in solidarity with the protesters in Kenya against Ruto, because Ruto was angling and circling to put all of us on the chopping table, to put the whole of Africa on the bargaining table. And in fact, he has already done that in many respects. So this doesn't concern only Kenya. And this is why Pan-African solidarity is really key. This is not just about Kenya, because what Ruto has been doing, the damage that Ruto has been doing, standing on a Pan-African platform, has been something that puts all of us in danger, all Africa in danger. Pretending to be a Pan-Africanist and doing things that basically negates the ideals and the principles of Pan-Africanism, giving all of us to America and to the West as some form of bargaining chip, so that he can live his ostentatious life, and all of that. So Pan-African solidarity is really key. We must be in serious solidarity with the protesters in Africa, in Kenya, and we must make sure that as African people, we do not let the Kenyan the protests, and whatever revolution comes out of it, die off. We must be able to Pan-Africanize it, and we must finally make sure that sort of the discussion also includes the need that these problems that Kenyans are facing are also being faced by Ghanaians and Ugandans and Nigerians and whatnot, and that it is only by coming together in unity that we can face off all these challenges.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Brother Hardy, there for that very insightful and in-depth analysis, really, analytical perspective of the real challenge of Ruto remaining in power, and why very clearly this is an all-African problem. When you started talking about all of the agendas that he was, engaged in, and the positions that he was taking, the carbon credits, the GMOs, etc. These are serious, serious moves that are going to have damaging effects on Africa for generations to come. Thank you so much. There was so much that you said there. I'm not going to go over all of what you said, beloved, but people, please do take this clip and share it, because as our brother Hardy has said, this is bigger than just Kenya. He's using the West are actually using Ruto and propping him up, as they were propping him up as a president that they needed to emulate, and whose policies they needed to replicate, and in whose footsteps they needed to follow. So it's, well done to the Kenyan people for pulling the rug from under his feet, because what you have done, you sent a clear message to the rest of the African presidents. This is absolutely not the road to go down. And it's not just the young people's eyes that are open, because we saw those demonstrations. There were people of all generations and all age groups on those demonstrations. Absolutely agree with all of what you said there. We'll come back to some of that. in a short while. Okay, thank you, Brother Hardy. Let's go over to Brother Kwame. Brother Kwame, as Brother Hardy has said, this is an all-African problem. And, you know, the implications of some of the policies and the decisions that Ruto was making, the fact that he was being propped up as the president on the continent that the rest of Africa should listen to. He was chairing important meetings like the Climate Change Summit and agreeing to the sorts of policies that was just giving away land to, you know, enemies of Africa. He needed to be brought down, or has Hardy got it all wrong? What's your perspective on this, please, beloved?
Thank you, Sister Shanice. I hope you can hear me very well. Thank you.
Yes,
thank you, my brother. He has really articulated and touched the core of the situation in Kenya. And of course, our sister also, who's on the ground, will come and give us what she's directly seeing on the ground. I happen to be one of those people who had a lot of hope in Ruto, looking at the political structure in Kenya, how politics is organized. We had some sort of ruling dynasty. We have, of course, the Odinga dynasty, and then we have the Uhuru dynasty on the other hand. So there was a lot of hope that Ruto would be some form of outsider who would come and cause some level of radical change within the African society in Kenya. And as my brothers, already pointed out, when he came, he got these platforms. We saw him speaking at the Pan-African Parliament, where he gave, a very hot speech that, raised a lot of attention to him. And many of us thought that he's somebody who has come to change the continent. And some of us, of course, started even supporting him. And also, of course, one way or the other, reluctantly, and we asked, is this the man that Africa has been waiting for? I happen to have participated in a program on a YouTube channel called Connect Africa. Is a YouTube channel of one of my Pan-African sisters from Ethiopia. And we were asking that question, is this the man Africa has been waiting for? And if he's the man, then it is necessary to give him the support. And of course, that followed him with his other speeches, one which he gave in Djibouti, and he called for the use of the Pan-African payment system, which was started or which was inaugurated by the Africa Import and Export Bank, which is a payment system basically that is supposed to bypass the United States dollar so that when we are trading under the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, we should be able to use our own currencies as Africans to exchange directly without having the dollar. So Ruto presented himself as a champion of these initiatives. And with this, of course, he fooled a lot of us, he fooled a lot of people. But it is later then that we realized his true colors, starting with some of his actions that he started taking. When you look at what happened in Mali and Niger, he came out to condemn it, and yet this was, something, was a coup or taking of power. It was taking of power which looked like it was supported by a lot of people on the ground, and a lot of African people were supporting this taking of power in these countries. And simply because we see that the so-called democratic dispensation, which took over after the generation of independence, has not delivered up to now. It has not delivered the goods. There's this adoption of the procedural democracy from the West, which focuses on the procedures and does not, talk about the results of those procedures. So from the Western system, which countries developed without democracy, with the taking of labor, and they developed under dictatorship and state capitalism. They are the same countries which come around and tell us that we should develop with democracy. So this system has been ineffective for most of the part on the African continent and also the global. And this is the system that Ruto was promoting, a system which our people have put a lot of question marks on currently. And our people are, thirsty. They are thirsty for new solutions which will move the continent and their countries forward. So Ruto came out immediately and condemned what happened of course, in Burkina Faso and Mali and Niger. And he said that democracy must take shape. And so this is where, to many or most of the people who had even a little bit of support for him, the signs, started showing that this man is not for us, is not for the continent, is for something else. He represents something else. He followed that up with certain trips in West Africa. He spoke these words where he condemned the new leadership in these countries when he was in Zambia. Then he made a trip to West Africa. So this is where we started opening our eyes, those of us who were, in support of him. And we see that he went on to accelerate his treachery, and he's selling out, and of course up to the Africa Climate Summit, where he's giving solutions that are not backed up with any actions, solutions that are not backed up with any financing. Nothing solid has been done. Even when we look at the speech which he gave at the Pan-African Parliament, his inaugural speech, at the Pan-African Parliament in South Africa, you could see that there is solutions within the speech, but there's nothing really practical that he has put on the ground that this is what I'm doing, which is contrary to what people like Nkrumah represented, that when he spoke about something, he put something on the ground. When he gave a suggestion, he gave a plan, if it was an industrial plan, he backed it up, whether it is an initiative of a dam, he backed it up. So all these things put a lot of questions on Ruto as a person, and of course many of us again began to question who brought him to power. What did he come to accomplish? The Africa Climate Summit itself, when you look at the resolutions of the Africa Climate Summit, they sound like they were written by one person, himself, and he was pushing them on the rest of the African heads of state. If you listen to people like the president of the Africa Development Bank, he was saying that Africa cannot afford to say that we will abandon the use of fossil fuels because we have these fuels, we should use them to develop ourselves. We cannot afford to abandon them and say we will move to renewable energy when there's no financing for that renewable energy. The countries, which promised to finance this transition from fossil fuels failed to honor their pledges at the Paris Climate Summit, which happened, I think it is in 2018. They promised to finance this process of transition, to give the Global South money so that you'll be able to bridge that gap between fossil fuels and the new renewable energies. They promised to finance every year about $100 billion. Now, this money, not even 10% of it has ever come ever since the Paris Climate Summit, was put on the back or was, completed. So, and it is the same countries, unfortunately, that are pushing so much and trying to convince Africa that it should shift and use renewable energy and abandon the fossil fuels which we have, and of course that includes gas. But what is interesting again is the same countries that are taking some of our coal when there was energy problems with the Russia-Ukraine war. They were taking the coal from South Africa, and South Africa is having energy problems. They were taking our coal to Europe to use it, and it's the same people. So these are the people that President Ruto is dilly-dallying with. That is why there's a lot of question marks now on him. So this finance bill just, brought up everything, and we were able to see inside. It even gave us an opportunity to clearly look inside and examine the Kenyan economy. And because this bill realized that it was pushed to pay certain dates of certain entities, and those entities are majorly Western entities, which entities we know very well are not contributing to the African economy, but rather they are acting in a parasitic manner to extract every pound of flesh from the African people and even suck out the blood itself. So when we talk about a debt which has been at the forefront, for example, of Kenya, we see that majority of the external debt of Kenya as a country is owned by the Western world. Just last week, President Ruto had a call with the one manager, Kristalina, of the International Monetary Fund, in which he said that this call was meant to assure the IMF that they are finding ways of compensating for the failure of the finance bill. So it showed us that the IMF was the one which was behind this finance bill. But at the same time, an article came out where the United States was claiming that Kenya will not be able to meet the needs of the people, the social needs of the people in the country, simply because of debt. And that debt is due to the Chinese. So in this, Washington sought to deflect the anger of the people who are clearly, in sight, or they have clearly understood what the problem is in their society, that the blood is being sucked out of our people, our parents, and we cannot take it anymore. These International Monetary Fund and World Bank, these parasites, we have to find a way of definitely resisting them. And this is what the people have realized. But now Washington sought to distance itself from this date. And of course, Washington and the Paris Club, they are the ones who control the International Monetary Fund, as we saw, the Finance Pact, which was held, it was held in Paris. And all the culprits were there. The International Monetary Fund was there, and the World Bank was there. The president of the World Bank was there, Ajay Banga, who, of course, Ruto, even during this summit, called his friend. So the United States and the Western colonial countries, they control these institutions. Now, the United States sought in this article, which appeared last week, to distance itself and then shift the blame of this debt, which the people are revolting against, and which the IMF is fighting so much to see that it gets, the benefits that are coming out of Kenya or the Kenyan economy and the Kenyan people. The United States sought to distance itself from this debt. And this is what we have learned from this article, from the statement which came from the United States Embassy and the State Department, of course. Now, what is this debt when we really examine it, that the people are revolting against? because this finance bill was meant to raise about $2.7 billion every year. And it is through this assurance that Ruto wants to take more loans from the International Monetary Fund. And yet we know that already it is the Western institutions which hold majority of the external debt of Kenya as a country, as we will see, going forward, because so much has been spoken about Africa's debt, in the past. And as I've already mentioned, China has been implicated, in being the one who's burdening Africa's debt. Of course, we don't deny there's debt, on the side of, China. We have debt to China, which is around 3%. I mean, it's around 13% of our external debt. China owns 13%. And majority of it, actually, when you look at 70% of it, is owned by the Western world, their institutions. But these recent demonstrations in Kenya have highlighted clearly this question of debt. And for those who are really interested in looking at it, it shows who's really sucking the blood out of the African continent without putting in anything. Like I said, Africa needs to be careful with it, regardless of where it is coming from. We need to be careful with the debt, whether it is coming from China. And if we borrow, we have to ask ourselves questions. Are we investing, or we are just using this debt to consume, all right? Or we are just paying civil servants, or we are paying politicians and MPs who are not even contributing their reasonable quota or productive. Is it productive even to pay these MPs and civil servants? So these are some of the questions I think that we need to ask ourselves. But as protesters pointed out, this is not happening. The politicians are being paid huge salaries, and what belongs to the people is now being used to pay the so-called debt of the IMF and International, Monetary Fund. Okay, so this thing has been highlighted, of course, in the past, by many people, including Tarikana, the predatory lending, of the International Monetary Fund and World Bank, which Ruto himself, of course, agrees, and which was the focus of the Paris, the finance pact. The Paris Finance Pact, which was held in France. Dr. Arikana, the former African Union representative for the United States, has pointed this out, that the lending, which is being, done by the International Monetary Fund, of course, which is majorly financed by the United States through printing, just printing, money and putting in there, is predatory. All right, this is predatory. And many other people, of course, in the African space have spoken about this, including many other people, such as the president of the African Development Bank, that the institutions need to be reformed. And many Pan-Africans have said this. So Africa and the Global South are so much overburdened, but even with that, not mainly with the debt, but the interest rates. The interest rates are so huge that they are the ones which, it is a business now. It has become a business for the West to grow rich on the back of Africans from these, interest rates. But even the principal loans themselves, when they are given, they control them as if we are not going to pay back them. You look at countries like Ghana, for example, it borrowed starting last year $3 billion, but the money has been given to it in sort of trickle down. It is just trickling down. Let's give you 300 million, and then we will give you another 300 million, and give you another 300 million, and pass. So it is really, at the end of the day, not helping the country, but rather helping the political class. So that being said, the interest rates, on these loans are huge. So it turns out that according to the international financial arrangements, poor countries pay huge interest rates of up to 7%, from 5 to 7% on loans borrowed, and the richer countries pay only 1 to 3%. And this is something which Dr. Arikan has pointed out, and other economists, Pan-African economists who are really concerned about these matters have pointed out. They have shown that this is unacceptable. How is it that the one who's starving, is not given what he needs, but the one who is satisfied is given, the biggest chunk of the food? So, but Nkrumah also, highlighted this in his book, Neocolonialism, The Last Stage of Imperialism. If you go and read the chapter or the mechanisms of neocolonialism, he showed us everything that the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank was coming to do. And of course, he showed the fairness, the at least relatively fair, lending terms of the then Soviet Union and China. He spoke about this. But this is a book also which I would like other people to go out there and read so that they can understand for themselves. I don't want to be here preaching, when you can read it for yourself to be able to understand, because we need as many people to read this, to be aware of this, to be conscious of this that is going on, which is what our people are demonstrating against in Kenya. So when we are very many who are aware of this, then it gives us a chance in this struggle of fighting against the colonialism, the neocolonialism, which is presenting itself through people like President William Ruto. So while this debt is an issue, Africa, on the other hand, cannot be said to be one with the, of course, with the worst debt burden. And remember, I said that Africa also needs to be aware of these debts. But when we look at countries like the United States and Japan, we see that it's just that the debt in Africa is not used for what it is supposed to do, to benefit the majority of the countries. If you look at countries like the United States, they have more than 100% of debt. The United States has more than 120% of their debt. Debt to GDP is 120%. Japan more than 60%. For Africa, it is somewhere around 50 to 65%. Okay, so the US is really indebted to countries like China, but in most cases, it is mentioning that China is indebting, is burdening Africa with a lot of debt. It never says that itself, as the United States, it has a debt to China, which is almost close to $1 trillion. So they continue to use deceit to stay on top of the issues. Like I mentioned, when people are demonstrating against this debt, they want to come out and clean themselves, even though the figures are showing us who really owns this debt. Absolutely. All right, they want to distance themselves from this situation and say, we are not the ones who are causing these problems. And our man, Ruto, he's okay. He's fighting for something else. And this is simply because they have the institutions like media, even intellectuals, schools, books which are put in schools. They can do this because they have these institutions. All right. So it is important, I think, also for us to pay attention to these things and take advantage of them, when it comes to learning what is going on, but also to use this, struggle that is going on in Kenya, whereby the people have decided to come out against this predatory nature of the United States and the European powers, whereby they want to suck the blood out of our countries and our people, and then turn it and say it is somebody else who's doing it, to use this, of course, duplicate it across the African continent. So I think that it would be very beneficial for us to use this as an example, and multiply it, duplicate it all across the African continent. And it is the work of the Pan-Africans, I think, to, to raise to the occasion for this, enterprise.
Thank you so, so much, Brother Kwame Gonza there. You just really illustrated to us really what the protests in Kenya has actually highlighted to the people where you are in West Africa. It's highlighted, the problem of debt in Africa and, the interest rates that African countries are having to repay. And, the extent to which the monies that has been borrowed is not benefiting the people, it's benefiting only a few, but the people are expected to repay the debt. Where's the fairness in that? And yes, absolutely agree. Those debts are being used to suck the blood and the life out of Africa itself. Those debts are being used to allow the West to have access to Africa's resources, because obviously if Africa fails to repay those debts, it's going to have to pay those debts, in material wealth. And so either way they win. And as you was illustrating as well, even when they borrow huge sums of money, it doesn't come to them all at once. It remains in the Bank of the West, gaining interest in the Western banks. But at the same time, they're charging Africa interest for those loans at very unfair, as you were saying, rates of return as well. On my radio show earlier today, I played a clip by Wazungu Economic Analysis that was talking about the loan that Nigeria has recently taken out. And he was showing us in terms of the interest repayments, how for a loan of 2.5 million in 10 years' time, if there's a modest even 10% reduction on the value of their naira, they will end up paying 1 billion a year for 30 years for a loan of 2.5 billion with a 10%, I think he said, reduction in the value of their currency, which will happen and is likely to be much higher than that. The rate of repayment, although, when they were taking it out, it sounds really good because, with the loan that they were taking out, they wouldn't have to start repaying it for 10 years and there would only be a 1% interest, but they don't tell you what the impact's going to be on the devaluation of your currency, which they would devalue because they'll make it a condition of the loan. And so there's all these games that are being played, and you're right, it's a debt that the next generation will then have to try and find the money and raise the taxes to repay. So clearly, as you said throughout what you were saying, and I absolutely agree and stand with you on this, the Western democracy does not work for Africa. We can see that. We can see how the system itself is actually designed, to not benefit the people of Africa at all. Even the conditions of the loan. How can you loan some money and be told you can't use it to develop your infrastructure? You can't use it to for schools. You can't use it on education. You can't use it on hospitals. You can't use it to develop businesses. Well, hang on a minute, and then we wonder why these governments just spend it on higher salaries and buying SUVs and the likes. So they've, we need a new system for Africa. It's got to be an absolute better way indeed. And I'm going to come to a couple of clips in a moment, but not before we go over to Lillian, who has been waiting patiently. Thank you so much, Sister Lillian. We're looking forward to hearing what you've got to say afterwards. I'm going to bring in the audience. So audience, please, do let us have your comments in the chat. And then we will come back to a couple of clips that I've got about events that is happening on the ground in Kenya, if it doesn't come up from Sister Lillian. Rise up, Sister Lillian, over to you. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you so much, Sister Shanice, and everyone watching us live and those who are keenly listening to us. I'm very grateful for this great, wonderful opportunity, sharing to the world, to the whole world, what is happening and everything that we need to understand And I'm very grateful what my two brothers have really shared, and I've really learned a lot what I didn't even know I've really understood. And right now I'm in a position again to go back to my community and tell my fellow leaders, my fellow youths, my fellow society, community members, what is happening. I'm very grateful. And I'll also take this opportunity to thank the EAC, East African Community, and you lead at large, because they are the people who trained us, we as youths and we as youth leaders, to understand what is happening in the government, what is happening in Africa, what is happening in East Africa, and also what is happening in our countries. Through this training, I was able to go all over the let me say in my country, Mwazo, Kenya, we were training youths to understand the meaning of democracy. We were training them to understand why they should put their government into check. When I'm talking about putting the government into check, I'm talking about accountability. Our government, they need to be accountable for everything they are doing. So my regards go to East African Community, EAC. I was under the first cohort EAC Youth Fellowship, and you lead at large. My regards also goes to Pan-African Youth Integration Movement and the Motherland Youth Foundation, because through these people have been learning, we have been learning and sharing what is happening. How do we want our country to be? How can we talk to our leaders so that they can be accountable on what we are doing? Those are the most important people that I need also to congratulate. And also I'm congratulating you, Sister Shani and Dr. Abo, because Abo, he gave me the opportunity at least to share to the world what is happening. And also my regards go to Denzel, who is in UK. He has been supporting me on the internet. I'm very grateful. Now here goes, now this is my point. Many people are asking, who is the leader of GenZ? You have really understand the meaning of the GenZ and everything, but people are wondering, who is the leader of GenZ? And the same question people are asking, that who are these people sponsoring the GenZ? We, the young people. When I'm talking about the leadership and everything, I'll be specific. Our leader is Mr. William Ruto, our president. When I'm saying that he is our leader, he's the one behind everything we are doing. Because the promises that he gave us when he was vying for the seat, when he wanted us to elect him, and you remember he came up with very many things. He came up like the hustler nation. When we are talking about hustler nation, we are talking about the young people. These are people who are hustling. These are people who are trying so that at the end of the day, they can get something, so that they can change their lives. These are the promises he gave us, our president. And he was like, I'm going to change your lives. And another thing that he was, the manifestos, I'm talking about the manifesto and everything, was like mentioning the mama mboga. When I'm talking about the mama mboga, these are the people, these are the mamas, the women who are selling in kibandas, they're selling vegetables, tomatoes. These are people who are, they have a very minimal, let me say that their source of income is not that big. They depend on that vegetable they are selling, maybe 10 shillings, 20 shillings. They save at the end of the day. They go and give back to their kids in the house. They go and pay rent, school fees and everything. So when he came up with this narrative, everybody, majority of the people fall in, because they expected that at the end of the day, this is the leader that we want. Then we gave him time, because when we gave him time, we were like, now we are weighing the situation. Yes, we voted. Things went the way he wanted. Now he's the sitting president. He's the president of Kenya. What is it that is changing after the narratives and everything that he was promising, and more so the young people? We have not seen any change. We are struggling. Our lives are not the same. We are really struggling in Kenya. And something that is really, the cost of living is very high in Kenya. And I want everyone to imagine whereby the cost of living is very high. You don't have any source of income. You are somebody who is out of school. Maybe you are a graduate and everything, or maybe you are in school, but the cost of living is very high. There you are coming from a very humble background. When I'm talking about the mama mboga, the way he used to say, these are the mama mbogas who go in the evening at least to sell some vegetables. They are getting very little amount at the end of the day. These mama mboga they are paying taxes to the government. This mama mboga is at the same time they are taking their kids to school so that at least they can be educated, they can change their lives. The same mama mboga who needs to pay school fees at school, the school fees is very high. We had even feeding programs in school, but right now they are not there. So the lives in Kenya, the lives of the people, community members of Kenya are very, very difficult. People are crying day and night. I normally do community work. I normally engage with the vulnerable in the community, even the slums area, even at the grassroots level. When you see things on the ground, things are very pathetic. People are really suffering. And this is the same president who is coming up with a finance bill that even does not consider the lifestyles of the people of Kenya. They are not even bothered. And at the end of the day, the same government, we have people, we have MPs, we have senators, we have governors and everything, but their lifestyle is very high. And something that is really even irritating with the young people, these people, they normally boost on social media. They'll tell you that my shoe is 100K. These are the people that need to support us. And these are the people who are looting the little thing that we have, the little amount, the little resources that we are saving. At the end of the day, they are looting for their own benefit. And something that is really very terrible. When you speak out, you are going to the street and they're like, now this is the time where you will hear gunshot. This is the time where you will hear the young people are on the street. Some of them are dead. And the protesters are on the street. When we are talking about the protesters, they are talking about the young people who are like, we are demonstrating on the street. It is peaceful demonstration. Our message was very clear when we said that we reject the finance bill. When we were saying that reject the finance bill, it was not an offense. I don't think that was an offense. When I speak out, I've seen how the lifestyle is in Kenya. I've seen how my mother is suffering. I've seen how our neighbors are suffering. And then I feel like this thing is not right for us. Then we go around educating. We were doing community sensitization, community dialogues, where we were reasoning one-on-one with the people, the community members, asking them about the finance bill and even educating them about the finance bill. And these people were like, no, this one is too high for us. We cannot manage this. Then we as the young people, we have the responsibility to speak out for the vulnerable. We are the people, we are the future leaders. We are the people who need to change our country. We are the people who need to put our leaders on check. We have the responsibility to take care of our country. We have the responsibility to take care of our continent because we know what is happening on the ground. We know what they are doing on the ground. We know what our leaders are each and every time they are traveling outside. We don't know even what they are doing in secret. Maybe they are going even to sell our land. So we need to speak out. We need to put them on check. And when we were talking about rejecting the finance bill, and then things just happened the way it has happened right now in Kenya, there was blood all over. I don't say that we are like, we are controlling or we are controlling our people or we are controlling our leaders. That is not the case. What we are doing, we are demanding for accountability. We are demanding that everything that the government is doing, we need to be involved. 70% of the young people in Africa are the youths. 70% of the people in Africa are youths, and the majority of these 70% are jobless. So how can you raise a nation where people are crying day and night? How can you raise a nation where the young people are not employed? How can you raise a nation where very few specific people, we have specific people, their living standard are very high? And something that is very horrible and terrible is that our leaders, we are the people who elected them. And we elected them because we trusted them. We know they are going to serve us. We, the people, we are going to, the leaders are going to serve us in a way that they will listen to our cry. They will listen to our needs. They'll come on the ground and ask, what is not happening? How can we do it better? That is what we wanted. But instead, things were really different. When we speak out, we go on the street, we were just demonstrating. It was just a peaceful demonstration. Can someone even spot out and tell me that there were maybe 10 young people with guns on the street who were demonstrating? Can just somebody tell me if that was the case? Because there were cameras everywhere. We had the social media was all over. So can just someone just convince me and tell me that, Lillian, I saw the Gen Z, I saw the young people with guns, full armed, and they were attacking the police officers? That was not the case. And why is it that we were outside fighting for our rights? Then people are coming into, they are shooting us, they're killing us. There's blood all over in Kenya. Is that right? And when you speak out, they're asking us that we are being misled. There are people who are behind us. Let me put this clear to everyone and in the whole world. Let everybody understand this. We are tribal. We don't have any tribe. We are not supporting any tribe. We as the young people. We don't have any party that we are supporting. We the young people. And also let me say, those who understand what is happening in Kenya, even the Kenyan citizens, we don't have any leader that now this is our leader, like the one who is pampering everything, maybe spoiling us, maybe is funding us with everything. There's no leader who is funding us to do what we are doing. We sat down and we reasoned and we were like, what can we do so that we can better our country, so that we can put our leaders in check? And I'm not sorry to say this, African leaders, the only language that they understand is when they see you on the street. Because if it is petition, we did. Everything we did, we were all over social media complaining on what is happening, complaining on what we don't want, complaining on how they can do things, but they were not listening. They were not even there, like they are just making noise. So it is high time with the young people we wake up. And let me also say this, it is just the beginning. We are not stepping back. We are not being intimidated. We are not going to allow anybody to intimidate us because we are the young people. Maybe we are going to change whatever they are thinking. We are speaking one language, we as the young people, because we know what is happening. And maybe let me send a message to our leaders. And this is our president and the Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga. It's not all about Raila, that the young people now will fall in, because Raila has decided that now there are dialogues and everything, and now they can silence us. That one is not going to happen. It won't happen because we don't know their interest. And if you are very keen, when they were meeting, can even someone tell me that when the president and our former prime minister were meeting and other people, how many young people were there listening to what they were discussing? How many can just How many people can tell me that I saw a percentage of young people where they were discussing, where they decided that right now we are going to have a dialogue? There, I didn't see any young people. I didn't see even representative of Gen Z and everything. So we are the people who are crying, and they go and decide to have talks. It is not bad to be united and also to promote peace in our country, but why is it that they wait things to escalate and they are not listening to what we are saying? They are not listening. They are pretending that they are listening. They are pretending that they understand the language we are speaking. But in real sense, these people, they don't understand our language, because we have been speaking out. We have been speaking out, Ruto must go. Why are we saying that Ruto must go? Because we gave him a chance. And when you are very keen on that very day that our president gave a speech, after the protest, after the demonstration, on that day that the young people stormed into parliament, our president was like, he was not even sorry of the loss of lives and everything. He was only focusing on destruction of property. I think this message was very clear. And I was in a position, I sat somewhere in a position on television to watch him and to listen keenly on what he was going to speak to the nation or addressing the young people. And my surprise was that our president was not that much on the people who have been killed and the young people, the people who lost their life and everything. His main concentration was on destruction of property. We understand that the police officers, they have a role to protect the lives of people and also to protect the properties. But my question is, between life and property, which is most important? I think that life is very, very important. When you save a life, then it means at the end of the day, the 10 or 5 people that you have saved their life, they are going to build. They are going to make our nation, maybe these are going to be greater leaders, they are going to be big investors, and they are going to come up with properties. But when you are killing the innocent young people, you are killing our brothers and sisters on the street. And these people are fighting for their rights. These people are also fighting for your rights, you, the officers. It's not all about we, the young people. It's not all about that we are really specifically speaking out for specific people. No, Kenya is our country. Africa is our continent. We need to protect our country. We need to protect our continent. So what they were doing is not right. And more so, they were in the position even to have dialogues with these young people, because majority of them were even mixing with them. They were really interacting with them freely. They were even telling them, I'm fighting for you. I'm fighting, I'm doing this because of you and me and other generations. So it was not right for them to kill the young people on the street. And right now we are mourning. We are mourning our brothers and sisters. Right now it is quite pathetic for us that right now people are dead, that people are being buried. We are seeing every day and night, the young people are being buried. Then which generation are you raising? Then which nation are you in? And if you call yourself as a leader, I think maybe people don't understand the meaning of leadership. A leader without integrity is not a leader. That is what I understand. If you are a leader and you don't have integrity, if you are a leader but you cannot listen to the cry of the people, then you are not a leader. You are a dictator. I'm not sorry to say this. You are a dictator. That's why you are killing the innocent people who are raising their voices. If I'm not doing something if you are doing something that is right, you as a leader, and you see me complaining on what you are doing, and I'm giving you facts, I'm telling you that I don't want this, and not only me, majority of the people, as speaking out and telling you the truth that we don't need this in our country, we don't need this in our continent, then the most important thing you are coming in, what you are doing is killing and shooting people. Is that right? Is that the Africa that we want? Is that the type of leadership you will come and convince us that now you are the head of states or you are so and so? That is not right. That is not right at all, at all. I'm speaking because I know and I understand what it means sleeping without food. This is a young girl, for example, who is vulnerable from let me just concentrate on the vulnerable because I understand. I've been in that situation. I've been raised in that humble background. I understand when I tell you that a vulnerable who is sleeping without food, going to school without food, going to school, even she or he doesn't understand that at the end of the day, after school, what will I get? This is a vulnerable who is really suffering. And when she comes back at home, the mother has nothing to offer. Even the parents, they have nothing to offer. And to make matter worse is that majority of them, even they are orphans. I'm speaking about the young girls. We are talking about the pads. If you are even taxing the pads, I've been in the community. I've been conducting counseling and therapy session with the teen mothers. And my sister, I'm telling you, this is real. And I have videos that I'll share with you. They are quite pathetic. A young girl is telling me that I got pregnant because there was a boda rider. I couldn't afford, my mom could not afford the pad to buy for me a sanitary towel. So this man has been providing for me a sanitary towel and also buying for me some mandazis when I go to school. So I just decided to give in. These are the generation we are raising. This is a young girl with bright future. The life or her life is just cut off. And some of them, apart from raising babies alone, some of them are HIV positive. Why are they? It's not their wish. They did this because they had nothing else to do. At times I listen to these young girls and I feel like crying. And then you are the head of state. These are the things we are speaking out because these people, their life already is very tough. They cannot even afford a meal in a day. Some of them, they swallow those medicine, the HIV drugs. I think they call them ARVs. Then on empty stomach. At the same time, this young girl who want to wake up in the morning to go to school, at least so that their future can change. And you realize even at school, the school fees is very high. They are being told now go back at home and collect school fees. On the way, what do you expect? That's why we have suicide all over our country. That is why we have a lot of challenges. That's why we have victims. That's why we have teen mothers. That's why we have school dropouts. That's why we have street boys. Like today, I've been on the street with my boys, just talking to them and asking them about the challenges they are facing. They are telling me even since yesterday, water is a problem. Even getting one mandazi is a challenge. Then this is our nation. This is our country. Then when we speak out with the young people, when we go to the street and demonstrate, when we go to the street and we start demonstrating, we start raising our voice and they're killing us. Then what do you expect? We cannot be quiet when things are not right. I'm telling you, I'm urging all the youths all over the world. If you want to change, if you want to have something great in future, call me a bad girl. I normally tell people, as much as I have a dream, as much I have a vision, as much as I have integrity in me, as much as there's something driving me to bring a change in my community, even if you call me names, I don't care. Because I know if I attend to 10 people today, I do counseling, I have some talks with them. I listen to what they are passing through, and I guide them, even if I have nothing to offer. When I'm talking about nothing to offer, maybe I don't have money to give them, but I've done something. I've talked to somebody. When he or she goes back at home, she will think twice and say that if at all Lillian passed through this situation and he's here very strong, talking to us, then I need to work hard. I need to rise up, no matter the situation, no matter the background, no matter what are the challenges I'm facing. I need to be strong. I need to do something so that tomorrow my siblings or my brothers and sisters will not pass the same thing that I'm passing in today. I normally tell people that I was raised in a humble background. I understand when I tell someone that I went to school without shoes, and it was a long distance where I'm walking for a long distance, I'm going to school. Some few kids.
Oh, our sister's camera
about kids, I'm talking about children who are, yes?
That's okay. No, you're back. You froze for a short while, but you're now back with us.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we're hearing you now, sis.
Hello? Okay.
Oh.
Okay. I'm talking about, nowadays we have kids, children, they go to school with vehicles and everything. And we have some who are still undergoing the same lifestyle that me as Lillian, I went through. What can I do for them? I need to empower them. I need to talk to them. I need to tell them, don't give up, work hard, so that one day, one time, you'll change your life. You'll change the life of your parents. You'll change the life of your siblings. You will change the entire generation. So we, the Gen Zs, we are really, really, really bitter on what is happening. With the young people, we are really looking all around. Most of us, we are jobless. We have nothing to do. And you people, you are very keen on this message. The young people were very clear. They were saying that if I had something that I'm doing that is generating income in my life, then I'll have no time to go to the street. And that is the reality. If the government is coming up with projects that are giving youths upper hand, the projects that are changing the lifestyle of the youths, then I don't think that big number that you saw on the street could be there. That could not be the case. So we are speaking out. This is the only message, the language that our African leaders understand. And there's no time they are going to silence us with guns. We are not afraid of guns. We are not. Because when I die today, Lillian, I'm fighting for the rights of people, as long as I'm not doing any harm to my neighbor or my sister. I'm just doing the right thing by speaking out when things are not right. We need transparency in our government. We need accountability. They need to tell us, these are the projects, these are the funds that we have, or we have this amount, we are going to do this and this. And at the end of the day, we see there's transparency. We see accountability on what they promise they are going to do. And we see something we call that, because majority of them, what they normally do, we borrow money each and every time. We are borrowing, but our lives are not changing. Why are we borrowing huge amount of money? And yet we have 70% of the young people suffering, crying. They don't have jobs. Then our question is, where is this money? This money, what is the meaning, or what is the importance of this money being borrowed, and yet we are not seeing the good results? This is the question we are asking. When they are telling us about the projects, we are not even seeing the projects. They are talking about the project and the money, they're speaking different language. When we are talking about accountability, maybe I want something on the budget. We as a country, we as the young people, we as the people of Kenya, maybe this is the budget. Then they come up with proofs that show this is the budget that we had. Then with this budget, we spend this and this. And there's transparency. Then we will have no time to go on the street. We have projects that are employing young people. They are coming up even with the startups. They are supporting the young people in business. And even at time I ask, why do we speak good English in Kenya? And yet, agriculture is optional when we are at school. This is the question I normally ask myself. Why do you train me or you take me to school so that I speak good English? And yet my stomach is empty. I'm speaking good English, yes, but I have nothing. Then where are we heading? And then you are telling me that agriculture is optional. Why can't you come up, you as the government? You are telling us you are borrowing money. When we are talking about agriculture is everything. When we are talking about business to the young people is everything. You come up with something that will support the young people so that at the end of the day, they are stable. They are financially stable. Even when it is not that financially stable in quotes, but at least at the end of the day, as a young person, I have something that I can put on the table. I can work hard on my own. You can support me in different ways, but I'm telling you for free. Watch these African leaders, what they are doing. When they are already, they get that opportunity. We vote for them. I normally say that democracy is a rule of the people, for the people. The citizens of the country elect the government to rule the country, and the elected government work for the welfare of the people. If I'm not wrong, that is all we can describe democracy. Then what normally happens in our country? Today, this is an MP. He's coming in with a manifesto, telling the young people, giving us fake promises. And they don't understand that nowadays, we normally note down everything they tell us they are going to do. We listen, we give them their ears, then we note down. Then we give them time. Then we start counting one by one. They promised that they are going to do this and this. What have they done? When you go to ask them, they are like giving you stories. And when you see their lifestyle, it has really changed. These are now people who own flats. These are people who are driving big cars. And you are like, what is not happening? This is our money. We are the people who elected you. These are the taxes that we pay, we as the citizens of the country. Then when you are bragging to us on how you are driving this and this, is this the right way to things should be done in our country or in our continent? And another thing that I want to be very specific, and this is a message to all Africans, and it is also a challenge. I want to challenge everyone, including me, Lillian. We normally say that at times we blame the white settlers. They give us funds, we do projects and everything. Let me just ask Africans, starting with me. For example, we are blaming the white people, saying that they normally do this and this and this, but are we accountable? When you cannot be trusted with that little resources of your community members, then when you are in a position of these white settlers, maybe you are given those donations to give to your fellow Africans, what will you do? Will you be accountable? Will transparency speak and be like, this is what I have, and this is what I'm going to support my people? Because when we are blaming others, we also start with ourselves on what we are doing. We as Africans, we as leaders, we already see what our leaders are doing. The little income that the people, the community members are getting, that is what they are looting. And when I go back to the people, maybe to the to the white people and other people that maybe are sponsoring our African youth and everything. Maybe they're training them, they're paying their school fees. If you were an African, maybe me, Lillian, I've been given 100 billion USD to give back to my fellow African to support them. Will I be accountable? Will I give the amount to my people? Or the first thing I'll do, I'll start with myself. I feel everything. I loot everything, and then the remaining, the small amount that is remaining, now I give back in the name that now I'm helping my people. That is what we Africans are doing. I need to tell the people the truth. Even these organizations that are coming in, some of them are not straight, because when they give you money to give to the vulnerable, are you giving out that money to the vulnerable, or you normally, like you are passing through somewhere, you are doing this and this, then the remaining little, you are doing it, you are giving out in the name of support. And mark you, this is not your money. Somebody has donated this amount so that you can support your brother. This is your brother, your African brother. And then that is what you are doing. For example, you, my sister, you gave me some amount and you tell me that, Lillian, go back and give to the teen mothers, support them. Give the street boys, go and buy them food. Then after you have sent me the same amount, I feel that, oh, this is now an opportunity for me to develop. This is an opportunity for me to drive big cars instead of going on the ground and support these people, because you have denied yourself. In the name, let me support my African members in Kenya, for example, or in Tanzania. These people are suffering. It's not that you don't have what you can use that money for. It's not that you don't have projects that you need to develop. You felt it inside your heart and you said that, let me support my brother and sister. My Africans are really suffering. I can't be undergoing, maybe my lifestyle is a bit high and yet my brother is sleeping hungry. And then you give me that amount, you have sacrificed. And me as Lillian, I feel that, okay, now this is the opportunity for me to become rich. This is the opportunity to build myself. Yeah. So we need to change the narrative. We Absolutely. As Africans.
Absolutely, yeah. My sis, you know, accountability is a top-down and bottom-up requirement in Africa. We all have to be accountable for any funds that we have or collect in the name of the community, and we have to be transparent as well. If asked to present the budget, the finances, we have to be transparent and have that information. My sis, you know, our hearts were just wrenching when you was telling us the stories of the teen mums, those with the HIV, those who are having to, you know, give themselves to older people just to get some food in their stomach. My sis, the reality of life on the ground. And then, you know, the killings of our people, our young people, because they decide to go out and protest. And when, you know, we hear the story of the contrast between what Ruto was promising, and then because he failed to deliver and people decided to come out on the street, how they were being treated. You know, sis, I was reading the chat as you was talking, and everybody in the chat was saying, you know, we feel your pain, etc. I'm just going to bring in a couple of comments from the chat. I mean, I don't even have time. I don't think there's time even for me to respond really and to raise any more questions that I wanted to raise. But let me very importantly bring in our audience, because, you know, we want to thank you all so much for keeping it locked. Brother Kwame Oboje in the house, they seem to have was having a bit of a conversation about Gaddafi and contrasting the difference between the way he looked after his people and the way that African leaders failed to look after their people, you know. And, you know, we want to hear from Rise Up Brother Mikey in the house as well. And CNS is saying that Muammar Gaddafi became president of Libya at the tender age of 27 and did a remarkable job for his country. I didn't realize that he was so young when he went into power. And he was a phenomenal leader. And sadly, his people didn't realize how well off they were, because what? As Brother Kwame said, the West pay, spend over 500 billion a year just on propaganda alone. Why? Is it 500 million or 500 billion? Anyway, a large sum of money on propaganda, just so that they can control the mindset of the people. And the Libyans had it so good, but so effective was the narrative of the West. It made them believe that they were suffering when they were not. They needed to hear your story, Lillian, of all the people who you've been counseling, who you've been talking to, who you've been assisting. Had they heard all of those stories, maybe they would have realized just how well off they are. You know, parents, no food to give their children, children going to school without food in their stomachs, coming home, not knowing if they're going to eat, you know, and then the parents working so hard, you know, for the little that they are trying to bring in. And then, you know, people crying day and night in the slums because they don't know how they're going to manage. It's heart-wrenching. It really is. Rise up, Sister Sharon in the house says, greetings, Dr. Shanice. I'm here waiting for a notification to say that you are live. Decided to see what's up in case there was internet problems, and realized that I had been unsubscribed and not by me. There you go. The powers that be, I mean, they're fighting against me. I know. I've started a TikTok account as well. So you can get me on TikTok, Sister Sharon. Quite soon I'll be going live on TikTok, maybe even instead of YouTube. Yeah, they demonetized me about 1.5 years ago because of my content, but my content hasn't changed. And a lot of people are saying that I'm not coming up on their feed anymore. And now you're telling me that you didn't even get a notification that I was live. And then when you check, you've been unsubscribed and you haven't unsubscribed. So it just goes to highlight the dirty games that are being played because, you know, they want to try and sabotage the work that we're doing here. At the moment, it's saying that I've got 49 live views. But when I go and have a look at the analytics behind the scenes, I'll probably see that there's at least 200, nearly 300 watching live. Last strong, there was like nearly 900 that was watching live. So they are definitely shadow banning me. But thank you nevertheless, you know, for hanging on in there. We much appreciate your support. Yes, Chinguana, agree with you. He says there needs to be an Africa unity movement now. An Africa unity movement. You know what? I think it's already happening in the spiritual realm, because young Africans, as we've been hearing today, they're not it's not about tribe, it's not about nationality, it's not about political parties anymore. They've seen through all those games that the West used to be able to play, or the leaders used to be able to play to win the votes. And now it's about which leader can put food on the table, which leader can deliver projects, which leaders can transform lives, which leader can create and build cities and develop our infrastructure and build industries that's going to make us more competitive on the world market, which leaders are going to be able to create jobs and opportunities for us when we leave school, college and university. That's what it's about. It's about, you know, the collective now coming together and having leaders that can improve their lot. Mikey said there was no unemployment either in his country and people lived good. And I think that's to do with Gaddafi as well. Rise up, I'm Soap TV. Good to have you in the house, Steve. Good to have you in the house as well. Stephen says, I'm feeling your pain and you're telling it like it is, Sister Lillian. You know, we are 2 minutes away from the top of the hour. The time has just gone so quick. I don't even have time to go around the board again. But you know what, my brother Kwame, you know what, my sister Lillian, I will be inviting you back. We will get to hear more of your stories. We will get maybe even the opportunity to interview some of those young people and hear directly from some of those young people. And maybe my audience will be saying things like, how can we support? What can we do to support? so that we can be of real help and assistance. If we can get a project going, even a feeding program where we can start by feeding 10, then increase to 20, 30, 50, 100 people, there must be something like that we can do. We want to make it happen. You hear that, audience? And I certainly hope that when the call comes, if your heart's really in it, that you will support a project, when I say Lillian's projects, and it will be maybe a feeding program so that children don't go to school hungry or don't come from school and not have something in their stomachs. We have to do for self until the government can do better. So I want to rise up, everybody. The Sheriffess is in the house. Thank you so much. She says, whether speaking British, speaking Dutch, or speaking French, we need a united African army who fights for the people and not the West. Absolutely. The CNS says that irony. Maybe it is brick and mortar that elected him into office. I think that's to do with him showing more compassion and concern about the destruction of property than of life itself. So plenty more comments. Mikey, rise up. Sorry, Sister Afri-Jamo's in the house. Rise up yourself. She wants to know, where's the money going? Indeed, all of this lending, but you're on the ground. There's no evidence of where that money is being spent. CNS is saying building of industries to process the raw materials locally will provide the much needed jobs, producing what the country consumes and consuming what the country produces. Absolutely. The people have the answers, but, as we've been hearing, there are too many people in political positions who seem to be more interested in showing off flashy shoes and watches and designer stuff than spending the money on the community. And for as long as we have those sorts in power, then, it will not get any better for the people. And so we want to rise up the young people, and not even just the young people, but today's generation who are saying enough is enough and are prepared to go out and protest irrespective of. We stand with you. We salute you. And, we are calling on our ancestors to strengthen you, to protect you all across the continent. Brother Kwame, we thank you so, so much. Sorry, I don't have time. It's now 1 minute after the hour. Lillian, thank you so, so much. Brother Hardy, in your absence, thank you so, so much. I'm going to be calling you back again very soon, family, because this needs to be continued. More love, more strength to everybody in the audience. More Vudum power. Dr. Abu, thank you for introducing me to Sister Lily. Rise up yourself every time, Dr. Abu. Maybe you'll join us one day on the platform again as well. It was so lovely having you in the past. I know you got busy, but, maybe you'll find some time in the future. And thanks to everybody who's listening, to everyone who shares. Please, I need you to share my works, because YouTube is doing the best they can to sabotage it. Almost every week they're taking down one of my videos. So now I'm recording my videos separately, and at some point maybe I'll get to upload them somewhere else. So we continue to do the works that needs to be done, and we continue to open the eyes of our people and put pressure on our governments. As you say, my sis, absolutely agree with you, so that they will be accountable. To stand by the word, accountable to stand on the manifesto that they were elected on, accountable for the disbursement of the funds that they have been trusted with, and accountable, to the people who elected them. Gotta get out of here. I can stay and talk for another hour, but gotta go now. We've been here 2 hours. We've kept you all long enough. Thank you so, so much. Sister Shanice, out of here for now.